Good morning, everyone. This video is going to be titled something along the lines of The Conspiracy of Men Against Women, or How the Devil is in War with Woman, Collective Woman. This particular video is probably going to be referencing the Bible quite a bit. The next video that I make will probably be taking modern examples of how this is practically working out even in modern days. So whenever you're talking about ancient wars, you have to go to the very beginning, and the very beginning is the book of Genesis in the Bible, where we see the fall of man and the fall of woman, and we see God showing up on the scene and God declaring judgments on all three. And I really believe that in these judgments, we see God buffering the ambitions of mankind. When you're dealing with a man who is told that the earth will become more difficult to produce, you see that, young men who are full of ambitious desire to take over the world are buffered. And eventually they learn that, well, actually the earth and producing what they're so ambitious for is a lot more difficult than they had originally planned. So we see judgment very often having to do with buffering ambition. With women, it was about the fruit of their body, which is typically the ambition that you see women working through, which is their children. And then, of course, the devil, just that he would have to eat dust and slither on his stomach. It just sounds like, he wasn't incredibly empowered in any case. But besides all this very bad news that God comes with, he also told women that she would be ruled over by her husband, and this was part of the judgments, and that it would be more difficult for her to produce children. We also see God saying something very interesting to women, which is that there would always be conflict between her and the devil, basically, and between the devil's seed and her seed. And you see this incredible promise that women would eventually triumph and that her seed would eventually triumph over the devil. And if I were to try to basically express what I think the real root of this war between man and woman is and the seed between the devil's seed and the woman's seed, I would have to say that it's probably, well, I believe wholeheartedly that it has to do with legalism and the law. We see the law coming down on women tremendously through history. We see it hitting men too, but I think that there has been no greater victim to conspiracy theories and sins and punishments for sins and punishment for transgressions than what has happened to women throughout time. Even these days, we have honor killings where women are slaughtered for sexual impurity or different issues. So there is definitely sort of a plot or a conspiracy against women in regards to legalism, in regards to the law. So the Bible mostly is about the genealogy of Jesus Christ. The Old Testament is the genealogy of Jesus Christ. And that's very interesting because that basically shows the struggle to produce Jesus Christ, and that it had to do with children, and it had to do with almost the sort of race between the different tribes that came from Abraham, and then Isaac and Jacob, and so on and so forth. So it's very, very interesting to see how God worked through children and family and through the generations. So you get a real peek for that, and you also see just how difficult it was for women being ruled over by men, but also how difficult it was very often for them to produce those children. And very often it had to do the real struggle that women faced had to do with the legalism that was coming from man. So anyway, so if we look at that and we look at how authority through the law has tried to destroy women throughout time, and we looked at probably the greatest example of this happening, we would have to look at Mary. Even though every single woman in the story of the genealogy of Jesus Christ had her part and was definitely one of these women, probably the ultimate woman was Mary, who gave birth to Jesus Christ. And when you see that, you see this woman who flew against all things understood about women and the religious system. You saw a young lady who was supposed to be engaged but hadn't actually come together with her husband, pregnant. And in the Middle East, where women's lives were quite precarious and delicate anyway, she is extraordinarily lucky to have survived that. And at any time, Joseph could have, through revenge or the desire to punish her, he could have had her killed. Her family probably could have caused problems and possibly had her killed. Her community possibly could have had her killed. So the fact that somehow she escaped all these particular people and all their particular possibilities for dragging her to the temple to judge her, to stone her, to condemn her, and that didn't happen is a miracle. I mean, that's probably even a bigger miracle than becoming pregnant without actually having slept with a man. This is a very, very difficult thing, and it probably took all the generations of God dealing with the families that came before her in order to finally be able to produce a Mary. So, and produce a community that can love and accept and protect a Mary. So, without condemning her or without throwing her into judgment. That being said, even though she was able to finally produce Jesus Christ, authority, earthly authority that is not submitted to God and to his rule, still tried to kill her and still tried to kill Jesus Christ. And we saw that through all the, not just the little authorities. You could say that her husband had authority over her and he didn't judge her. He didn't condemn her to die. You could say her community also had some authority, her family. But then there was the bigger authority. There were the kings and the rulers and the dictators of those particular time that felt that this little baby so challenged their rule and their authority that they really tried to kill. They tried to kill her, and they tried to kill this little baby. And they went so far as to kill every single baby from that generation, just to try to ensure his death. So then we look in Revelations, we also see the woman who had to hide in the wilderness. A wilderness is basically a place without authority. You don't have the rule of man in the wilderness. So any single woman who's carrying the seed of Jesus Christ is going to be a thorn in the side of any kind of an authority. It could be their father, it could be their husbands, it could be their communities, it could be their church, it could be the political power. There is going to be an inward desire for authority to judge and to condemn women who are carrying the seed of Jesus Christ. Now you might be thinking, well, how could the Bible basically be giving the women this sort of lofty position and also clearly declare that there is a satanic plot against women and against her seed in order to snuff out the kingdom of Jesus Christ? How can you basically say that when so many feminists have a problem with the Apostle Paul? Well, the Apostle Paul no doubt was a great, great man, and I have absolutely no doubt that he was an apostle, and he did tremendous things for the church and for God and for God's people. But he was still a human being, and even his own teachings contradict themselves. And one of the things that I can point out about some of his teachings against women is that he was the apostle of grace. He was basically there saying that the the punishment and the judgments from the garden were over. Jesus Christ came to take away all of those punishments and all those judgments so that we can be free, so that we could be free to live underneath grace, because all that stuff is gone. But then he states that the reason why women have to submit to men is because we are the ones who fell. We were the ones who were tricked by the devil. And therefore, we had to remain underneath the authority of men. Now, I have no problem or qualm with the idea that men have a special kind of authority and a special kind of place with God as a kind of figurehead type perspective. But in regards to submission, as the Apostle Paul speaks about, I think is fallacy, and it flies against his own teachings. Not purposefully, but just because he was a human being, and especially being a man, and men having this sort of inward rebellious desire to squish women, especially God's women, in order to subvert the kingdom of God, I think is in every single man. And I think it's very much in religious men. So the apostle Paul, great man, but he still had probably some rebellion in his own heart and wanting to usurp the rule and reign of Jesus Christ through reigning over women in a way that Jesus died to take away from women. Because Jesus didn't just die to set men free from the law of sin and death and condemnation. He died for mankind, and women are part of that. So I definitely think that there are some issues with the Apostle Paul. I think he said a lot of really great things, but I think that his own vision stopped when it came to women, very possibly because of the sort of demonic rule that usually expresses itself through men in order to usurp, usurp God's throne. So I really, really, truly believe that this is something that is so important. If we are ever to see the kingdom of Jesus Christ to come, this is the most important thing, because I really, truly believe that women in general have a conspiracy against them. I really believe that men, whether they know it or not, are part of this conspiracy in order to try to keep control over the earth, and to try to keep Jesus Christ from basically ruling and reigning over his own creation. And I believe that there are so few men who have so thoroughly purged the ambition from their own hearts that it takes an incredibly special man in a woman's life to basically not try to destroy her, or to destroy the child or the seed of Jesus Christ that is in her. So, yeah. So anyway, I will explain in my next video how I think this manifests even today.